welcome to the stage David Straily. I think that's right. I hope I've not got that wrong. Well, he can correct me in a minute. Who is the engineering director of Raidbase, and is a superstar sessions. It's going to be a good one. He's talking about how to make a competitive multiplayer experience that drives deep engagement. That's good. That sounds like a very promising talk. No pressure, David. So, David, how are you doing? You're muted.
I'm well, thanks, Chris. I appreciate being here and excited to talk with y'all.
Whereabouts are you in the world? I'm
from Colorado, USA these days.
Oh, nice, fantastic.
We've brisk 10 a.m. in the morning for me. Yeah.
Oh well, that's good. We had some speakers from Asia this morning, so we've kind of going around the globe, and it's getting quite dark in the UK, as you can see. I don't know what's going on with my lighting; it's ridiculous. But anyway, we're already a bit late, but don't worry, you've got your full time, your penultimate, so it's only the panel after this. So I'll let you crack on with it, and then I'll come back with any questions at the end, and we go from there.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris. Can everyone see my screen? Am I good there? I'm good. Okay, great. Thanks. So yeah, hey everyone. My name is David Straily. I'm the engineering director at Raidbase, and today I'm going to talk with you all about tentpole game design, how to make a competitive multiplayer experience that drives deep engagement. Now, to first kind of explain what the word tentpole means, because it's not a super common term. It actually comes from film. But it means a company's most promising or prominent product. And generally, your tentpole game generates most of an organization's income, making it possible for other studio employees to make products that may be more risky or less profitable. So otherwise said, this is a big budget, big confidence game that we know is going to last for years to come. And again, as I mentioned in film, this has been a concept for decades. And like, Disney does this with like, Marvel movies and like Pixar movies that come out, once a quarter or so. But for video games, it's really only been a recent thing in the last 10 years. The biggest tentpole games themselves too are normally competitive multiplayer games. And to name a few of them, right, you might know are Call of Duty, League of Legends, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto Online, even as an example. But I feel blessed that I had the opportunity for the last 5 years to be the first starting as a gameplay engineer and then became the engineering director of Valorant, which is a game that came out in 2020. And it has 15 million monthly actives, and it's growing more and more. But it's a very nascent, young tentpole game. But me being a part of that development process through the whole phase, I learned a lot of lessons that I kind of want to share with you all, in this quick 15-20 minute chat. I guess as a brief bio too, I worked here, and then before this, I worked on Halo and the Xbox One. So I've been around mainly in the PC and console space. I don't do a lot of mobile games, but I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned that kind of can be shared between all different industries. If you want to hear, this is more a high level talk too about design. If you want to hear some nitty gritty detail about multiplayer implementation, you can go watch this 5-minute video where I talk about hit registration, or I have a bunch of technical blogs that have been shared on the Riot Games forum that you can kind of go peruse at your leisure. But today we're just going to talk about some core tenets. I've got 5 of them specifically too. So let's start from the top. So the first point is hire the right people. And so for engineering, right, if I want to get really brilliant engineers that are experts, I could snap my fingers and go hire, 1,000 people from Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, like those big mega tech corps. But the problem is, I think in game development, expertise is really not the thing you should be focusing on. You should be focusing on culture. I have an analogy. So let's say we're on planet Earth and we're trying to find some golden planet in a far off quadrant of the universe. And I'm trying to align my, I guess, rocket or slingshot to go find that. When I hire people on culture, they help me rotate the trajectory of where I'm going to take my shot to go find this planet. And when I hire on expertise, that's me adjusting the velocity of my ship to go faster or slower. And if you hire just people who are good at expertise and they're only there to help you manipulate your velocity, if you shot off in the wrong quadrant in the first part of development, you're going to be lost forever and you're never going to ship the right game, right? It's really, 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 really important to get aligned first on what type of game you're making and where you want to go. And having everyone on the team being aligned on that is absolutely critical. And then you can always burn more money and hire more expertise in the later part of the process to catch up to a ship date or slow down or do whatever you need to. But it's also harder to hire on culture too, because it's a little bit more murky and it's a little bit more intrinsic to someone versus what's written on the resume. I think a second point, and I learned a lot of this at Riot, and I'm using a lot of this now at Raidbase, is hire those who can empathize with players. A lot of people wanting to get into the game industry because they think it's cool, or I've heard often from parents saying they want to be working in games because they want to make their kids proud, right? And that's a noble reason to want to make games, but I think the real type of people you want to work with are people who are gamers themselves, who are passionate about what they're building, because they're going to make the experience that they want to play, which is ultimately the experience that everyone else wants to play. And if you hire too many people that are there just to do a job or just to clock in or clock out, they're not going to be necessarily as motivated to make the right player choices, and they'll kind of take shortcuts sometimes more often than they need to. I guess it's pretty easy to get a 40-hour-a-week job anywhere in the world. So let them go there and get only the most passionate people here in gaming. Okay. Second point is treat players with respect. So in making a hyper-competitive game, you want a player to invest for many hours over a long duration of time, right? And players aren't dumb. Players are super smart, just like you and me. They want to know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, or there's a reason for them to invest. And I guess the first point of that is a deep mastery curve is a must. Think of League of Legends is a game that's lasted 10 years. Rocket League's another really good game that's really easy to learn, but takes a lot to master because of the kind of nuance or competitiveness between the opponents and yourself. But if there's no reason or way for me to grow as I go over time, I'm going to get bored and I'm going to fall off. And there's not enough meat there for me to kind of bite onto. Second is if I spend months or years working on my skill in this game to get as good as I can, and there's no one else around me to respect or collaborate with me, or for us to like have social integration with, then it's still a failure. So you need to cultivate a community. Now, competitive communities are normally the best because people always want to fight each other, and humans are naturally competitive. But there's other ecosystems that work really well. Like Minecraft's a really good example that's not competitive, right? Where people want to go kind of share and create. But I'd say competitive ones are the most common ones and the ones I'm most familiar with. And you can think of this through either forums or esports or tournaments or things that we've heard in previous talks. Second thing is in regards to treating players with respect is don't nickel and dime or pay to win. You want to make purchases aspirational. If someone loves you enough as a player and wants to open their wallet and give you a voice of loyalty with money, you need to make sure their money is spent well, right? And you want them to feel good about spending money, and you want them to feel like it's a well-deserved treat. And we usually do this through cosmetics or fun augmentations to the game that don't necessarily mess with game balance. A lot of the older mobile games, and even some these days, right? It's more like, hey, I'm gonna put negative gates on you of like, you need to pay a subscription to keep alive, or you need to pay energy to kind of get in. And while that may get more money out of a player in the short term, in the long term, you're going to burn them out because you're eroding trust over time, because you're using them as kind of like in a lecherous state where you're kind of leeching from them rather than collaborating with them. And then the last thing, and I think this is especially unique to games, is cater to all audiences: boys, girls, men, women, and all cultures. And if you think about like movies, right? When you make a Marvel movie, it's really hard to cater to all audiences because you only have 2 hours to make a script. So very often it's, hey, I'm going to target teenage boys with like cool action stuff, and they're going to bring their families, and I'm going to get lucky and get all that. But for games, breadth is a lot wider, right? Not everyone plays games for the same reasons. And I say think player archetypes. And as an example, right? Some players may want to play because they want to be the best, right? They just want to grind and become like, hardcore gladiators. Some want to style on other people, and they want to be social, and they want to like flex on others and show how good they are in a very braggadocio way. And then a third type may be more your social gamers who, I don't really play because I want to play the game. I'm just playing because I want to be with my friends, right? And you just need to make sure what are all the types of audiences that are playing, and then what can you do to cater to each one of them to make sure there's a unique, compelling game element that makes them all feel like they're being loved. Okay, moving right along. Number 3, this is more towards the development of a game. Buy what you can and lead hard into your competitive advantages. So it's easier than ever to make video games these days. There's a lot of second-party and third-party software out there. Think Unity, Unreal, and then all the different types of like art editing software, source control software, meta services, and online services, etc. So don't waste time reinventing the wheel. you should take advantage of the thousands and millions of other people that are working hard just like you and buy their stuff off the shelf and only build the things that differentiate. If you try to make everything special, then nothing's special. And at least for Valorant, we learned pretty early on that we wanted to hyper focus on 128-tick servers, like rock solid client performance, really good hit registration and response of kills and anti-cheat. And everything else is okay kind of to be, not the thing in the spotlight, but functional, but not necessarily perfect. And when you do that too, you kind of put a stake in the ground and tell everyone, hey, I'm leaning hard into these few things, and I'm putting myself out there, putting my neck out there to let you guys know that this is something special and unique. If you try to just clone or make everything equal, you don't really stand for anything, right? And even though it's scary to stand for something because you might fail, standing for something is also the only way for you to stand out and become exceptional. We had a thing actually on the art team on Valorant where we kept trying to make really, really innovative characters that were like never seen before. And it ended up slowing a bunch of our pipeline down. And eventually we realized, hey, it's okay sometimes to just go with more like stock archetypes of things. Like Omen is your typical edgelord that you see in a bunch of games. And it turns out, players and people like those types of characters anyway, even if they're not, brand new concepts, and then they're seen before retreaded from other games or genres before. The last note I'll do, and I worked on this personally for 3 or 4 years, is for multiplayer. Is multiplayer is hard. So Unity especially lacks good out of the box support. They're like net sinks, and their variables are kind of really nascent, and there's a lot to be desired. So if I were you, I'd recommend you either go with Unreal or a third-party provider like Photon. Photon for Unity, Unreal native if you're just on that engine. It's going to save you years of time. Even for Valorant, I guess. We only kept like 60 or 70% of the Unreal code because we had to write a bunch of custom stuff for movement. But that 60% that we did keep still saved us 2 years of development. So it was totally worth it in the end. 2 more points. 4 is manage your studio in a conscious way. And what I mean by this is think about how you develop. So there's this triangle of choice between time, size, and quality. And the general, I guess, frame of reference is you can only pick 2 of the 3 triangle points to master, and you always have to kind of let one fall. And I'll talk about a few big studios to give you an example. So for Riot Games, or for Valve is another good example, they want to make hyper quality games. They also don't want their team size to get too big. They want maybe 100 people, 150 people max, or for Valve, it's like no more than 50 people per team. And because they want high quality and because they want a small team size, what it means is their development time stretches out to infinity. So sometimes they'll take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to make a game, where some other studios are cranking them out in a year or less. But that's their choice of their 2 edges of the triangle. Another example is maybe Rockstar Games. They make, Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption. They have a really specific time they need to ship their game because they have a regular schedule they need to keep with Take-Two. And they want a really high quality bar, just like all the other games. So what they let slip is size. So that's why they see a design org the size of 300, or they have 6 studios spread all across the world working, all the way around the clock to make sure the quality bar is hit. But they let the size blow up really hard. And there's a lot of logistics to doing that. And it is a different strategy than, say, Valve or Riot, but they can all succeed. They just leaned into their advantage. To give you a third example is Respawn. They want a really small team size. They want to ship on time on a year or 2 schedule. So they let the quality drop. And I don't mean a poor quality game. What I mean is when they want to go develop a game for, 2 or 3 years, they say, hey, here's the 100 features we want to make. And as soon as they start slipping along their schedule when they go towards ship, they just start cutting and dropping features, and they trim the game down to be narrower and narrower in scope. And then by the end of that time, they ship. And guess what? Like Titanfall 1, Titanfall 2, Jedi Fallen Order, all those games are great, and they're stable, dependable, and profitable. You could call out Apex Legends as like an anti-example, and you're right. Apex Legends is like almost a happy accident for them. I don't think they expected it to be as great or as big as it was. And funny enough, actually, a lot of Respawn devs actually don't like working on Apex Legends because it's a really long live service operation, and a lot of the devs want to go work on fresh new content and rotate to a new title every year or 2. So they're having to staff a lot of the Apex Legends team with either like augmentative EA staff or hire people externally, like from Riot, who are used to working on a live service, to then go staff, the ongoing endeavors. But either way, when you're building out your studio and working, you need to be really conscious about what are the 2 or 3 advantages I'm leaning towards. And if you don't think about this, eventually you start juggling too much and things start to drop, and you either don't ship or you ship a game that you didn't want to actually make. Okay, this is the last topic, and in my mind the most important, and this is most to game design specifically, is that variety is the spice of life. So this first bullet point, life is most rewarding when you live in high contrast. I live this personally very much, and I believe that games need this as well. In that if everything is always fun and good all the time, you get tired of it. Like you can't just eat ice cream and cotton candy like every day for every meal and sustain happiness, right? You need to have high highs and low lows to really make it worth it. Why do people run marathons? Why do people climb Mount Everest? They go for 3 months starving. Their fingers are getting frostbitten. They don't have any food to eat, all because they want to get that one moment of triumph at the very top, that they feel that they've made it, to the peak, right? Games need to lean into this more, I think. Like Overwatch is a fun game and did really well, but Overwatch likes to keep everything kind of like high tone and positive, where like everyone's always going on, everything's always going good, and they never really want to make you feel bad. And that works for a short time, but it doesn't give it the long legs, because you need to have that roller coaster of emotion to kind of regulate, to kind of go in the long. Counter-Strike did that really well. Valorant does that really well. And I'm hoping, it'll have that kind of long lifetime, like, we've kind of planned out for. I think the second thing, and kind of related, is make player investment in your game a worthy endeavor. So every human has physiological requirements, and there's 3 like big chemicals that are part of regulating our body and our mood and our happiness. So one is dopamine. Dopamine is, when you get a headshot in a game, or you get a like on Instagram, or you eat a good bite of food, or you have sex, or something that's like a quick energy action thing that kind of gives you a little pep or boost. Serotonin, mostly you get from sleeping well and good exercise, but video games can kind of do it well too, by letting you reflect on your past accomplishments and letting you think about the community. An analogy is like when I run in a marathon and like my friends and family came to like watch me and cheer me on, that gives me a serotonin boost and helps me regulate my mood, because I know that I'm having an effect on the community around me, and that reflects internally well on me physiologically. Video games can do this through ranking systems. Like I'm slowly progressing from bronze to silver to gold, or through camaraderie, through like I have a champion mastery of the certain skill on this champ, and I can compare myself to these other champions and people respect me for what I'm doing. Oxytocin, the last one, is probably the hardest one to get to, and video games really can't do this except for on a 6 or month or 1 year or beyond timeline. And it normally comes from something like, a mother birthing her baby, and like a maternal, like, child bond, or like you and your spouse if you're married. But oxytocin in a video game sense can come from your guild mates, or people in your clan, or someone that you duo queue with in competitive games all the time with, and you guys build a bond and you kind of know each other like the back of each other's hands, or even like you team of 5 in an esport venue and you guys have been training and working for years to kind of grow in there. And really, for someone as a human to be happy with a game and an investment, they need to have a balance of all 3 of these to kind of regulate, for them to really want to stick around and stay for a long time. A lot of video games want to just focus on, let me max out the dopamine, let me play some casino sound effects, let me like show you bright colors and all these other things, and that's all it kind of really does. And you're going to get them excited and hooked, just like a casino does, like a physical casino, but it's going to burn them out eventually, because you're not giving them like the mood regulation or the long-term bonding, and eventually they're going to burn out or fall out. And it turns out, at least in my mind and my belief, you can get a lot longer, more modest engagement from someone over a long term that pays off better than trying to juice someone in a quicker turn of action, like what we see in some other games. So anyway, ultimately though, like in summary, I want you to be present. I want you to be passionate about what you're doing. And then I want you to cultivate a team that shares that same mission and mindset. And as long as you find everyone else around you is just as passionate and cares just as much about what they're doing as you do, the previous 5 tenets are almost going to self-fulfill anyway. It's just about hiring the right people and working with the right people. I was at Riot before. I'm presently at Raidbase. I've been here a year and a half now. We're a dozen strong. We're making a super fun AAA game. If you want to, join or work with me in the future, let's chat. My email, Discord, and LinkedIn. I'm here for questions, of course, too. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, David. That was good. That was nice and short, professional, going through a lot of different points there. You've glossed over a few of them, so I expect there'll be some more challenging questions coming on a few of them. So I'm going to try and there's a few actually here around. A lot of them seem around company stuff, so I'm going to try and raise that. But yeah, very impressive CV. That's wow, very cool. So I've got a couple of questions here that are about kind of hiring, I guess. One is about how because you mentioned the team and who to attract and who not to attract. And I guess that the question was, how do you balance hiring with having a similar work culture, but maintaining a diverse team? Surely having a different culture can widen your view and help you think out of the box. And the other question, which is kind of in the same area, is well, it's not the same, but it's the same broad area, is how do you attract talent currently in the ultra competitive landscape? I guess there's a lot of money being raised at the moment and a lot of games being made, right? So I don't know if you've got anything you want to say to either of those. I know you're not a HR manager or anything, but
That's fine. Yeah, I double a little bit in our current setup, but so I guess the first thing in the money is never a good attractor, right? If someone kind of wants to work with you because they want to make a lot of money, it's a skewed motivation, right? And that kind of leans towards, hey, I want to make choices to maximize my output, right? And really, it's more, can I find someone who's mission focused, who cares about the player experience more than anything, and it is more about wanting to delight other people and peers or delight themselves through their own mission, and kind of go from there. So in regards to diversity, I think you have to look for it, right? One of the biggest fallacies of doing diversity hiring, I guess, is that when a hiring manager or a recruiter says, "Oh, I need to find, a senior artist or a senior engineer," they think, "Oh, I'm going to go look at, this really good college, right, or this really good company because they have someone that is certainly probably qualified for this job." But as soon as you say, "Hey, I'm going to go look at Yale or I'm going to go look at Stanford and go hire those candidates," you're already leaning into the bias of the pipeline, because 70% of the students at some of those top tier colleges are like, white males or Asian males, right? And you end up just by nature self-selecting to certain seniority. You only limit yourself to a certain pool, right? And I think leaning better into culture and finding people that want to opt into making games instead of people who are just pedigreed, you actually find a much more broader talent base of different types of diversities. So think of like, hey, I'm going to go find people that are, really passionate modders for a certain game, right? Or people who, are passionate about game design on maybe Twitter or something like that. But searching through, I guess, non-standard channels, or being willing to hire more junior people, you generally get a better representation of diversity because there's less bias in the pipeline because it's more early in the pipe. One thing for me, I guess I'm early 30s, but I went to college 10 years ago, and my computer science class was like, 8 females and the remainder of the 40 were males. And now it's much more close to 50-50. So you can see the pipeline actually pretty dramatically changing over time because a lot more people are interested in computer science, at least as a specific example. And that just makes it easier and easier for companies to kind of go get a better mix and get a more rewarding set of diversity talent, so you can then make a truly representative game that fits everyone's needs.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's good. I mean, obviously, it's certainly no longer the case that gaming isn't a proper job, right? I mean, we're a pretty considerable industry. Don't have to convince anybody anymore. I'm a little bit older than you, and it was always like, well, why are you getting involved in video games when you get a proper job? It's like, okay,
it's not like that anymore, which is great. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned about female male bouncers. So there's a question here that's kind of relevant to that. As an avid consumer and player of Valorant, I've seen this game growing popularity amongst many women gamers, introducing many women to competitive FPS gaming. Did this come as a surprise to you? Was it something you kind of played for, or and did it impact how you kind of further develop the game at all? I guess I don't know. I play Valorant. I don't know much about the community, but they're saying this is it's got a strong female player base. I guess I don't know if that's true, but that seems to be
so. I'm not taking any credit for it. I didn't do any of it, but Anna Donlan, who's our studio director, the head of it, who currently still is, she is wonderful. She's a really good product manager. She's a really good champion and voice of the players. And a lot of her effort kind of leaning into making sure we host like female only esports tournaments like we've done recently in the last 6 months. I'm not presently at Valorant, so it's hard for me to know all the details.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's a good example. And then I think another thing too is when we did our initial like Twitch splash to get a bunch of like sponsored streamers and things, we made a very explicit intention to not just go hire your very typical dude bro or most like top tier like Twitch streamers and kind of get a nice mix of all types of representation. And I think as well too in some of our game design, making sure we have a really good representation of each hero or each agent comes from like a different country of origin, and they have very unique, interesting backstories and character representation. Anyone who plays can find someone that they relate to really well, and they kind of want to invest their time and play as their character.
I think that's really important. Marvel are very good at that, right? Everybody's got heroes you can identify with.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a good question here which kind of resonated with me as well, because you mentioned in one of your points about not trying to make everything special. Don't try and work out what you want to make special and really what your strength is and really lean into that. And the question here from Sophie is, can you give any examples about like that area that was special that you leaned into in one of your games, whether it's a current game or a previous game you worked on? What sort of example of a thing that you went, look, this is our niche, I'm leaning into this,
Yep, sure. So I'm not going to talk about my current game because we're still released and I don't want to leak anything necessarily, but I'll talk about Valorant. So
it's fine, you can talk about it, go for it.
So on Valorant, the thing that we didn't actually know we wanted to do this until halfway through the development of the project, but we wanted to make 128 tick servers. So Counter-Strike Global Offensive is one of our, I guess, biggest competitors in the tactical shooter space, and you can only get 128 tick servers from them if you pay for a subscription through like a third-party affiliate that hosts like tournament servers. And we really wanted to lean into that as like a special differentiator for our free-to-play game to really stand out. And it took us, admittedly, like a team of 5 engineers, like 3 years working nonstop just to optimize the server to be as fast as possible to even run at 128 tick. And think too, like you want to run multiple servers on a single server rack. So actually I need to run a server at like 800 FPS so I can cross slice it on the server to scale for profitability so everyone can play it. But it was a serious investment on engineering time within the company as well. We had to spend, north of, tens of millions of dollars on infrastructure spend to buy enough servers and enough rack space all across the global presence to put this game out there for free for everybody. And that's a giant risk that I'm really happy that like Riot leadership was willing to kind of invest in us as a studio to lean really hard in to make a really big investment like that without any players playing the game yet, just on a judgment of faith in us that the pitch and the game and the core loop of it is going to be fun enough to kind of pay off. And that's a really bold bet that someone has to take, and not a lot of people are in the position they can take that bet, and leaning hard into those risks is kind of what lets things pay off in the end, I think.
Final question. I'm not gonna take Julian's questions. I think it's possibly leaning into a whole political thing. I don't think, Julian, that David meant that he wouldn't take someone from a good college institution. I think his point was more that he's more open, and you don't have to just take people from the
right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't want to get into political thing there about. I sense that could be a dangerous way to go. So the final question I was going to put to you is: this is quite interesting at the moment. This is something that's been an issue in different countries. You talk about player investment and the highs and lows and everything. Is there how much do you balance it? And I guess how do you take responsibility, I suppose, for that player investment emotionally? Without causing issues like addiction. I'm not saying like, we're all, everything's addictive, right? But is there anything you kind of have to do there to try and balance that? It's quite a big question. Maybe it's too big for this topic.
I can be very brief. Yeah. So I guess it's not really, I guess I talk about a bunch of the physiological things, right? And that's just interesting back science. But really what it is the way to describe it is take care of the player the way they want, that is proper, right? And if you think about like a hard dopamine addiction of getting addicted to Instagram and like liking all the time, right? Or getting as many likes as you can, or things like that, like that isn't taking care of the person's in a holistic way. And I guess the focus here is just to make sure you provide enough balance to them in all the ways that you can to kind of make sure it's regulated. Actually, one example for Valorant, a very tactical one, is we briefly considered a different type of matchmaking where if you play 5v5 all the time, it always gets really, really sweaty because it's like neck to neck, someone wins 13-12 or 12-13. But we briefly considered doing like A, B, 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 C matchmaking, where one player is like an A 20% of the time, a B 60% of the time, and a C 20% of the time. And the idea there is that sometimes you're the hero of the team, sometimes you're the middle of the road of the team, and sometimes you're the chump of the team.
Yeah.
But it gives a lot of like representative diversity when you play, that you're not always going neck to neck with everybody. And that kind of gives you different avenues for you to express yourself and gives you the variety, I think, that helps make you kind of get yourself out of a rut to kind of get more variety of what you need. And I think it's totally normal and expected too that players come in and play, they like fall off and then they come back later. It's more like that roller coaster, not of just moment to moment play, but also engagement with the game.
Yeah,
I
of
play,
course,
I
of
come
course.
off, I come back, I come off. And I know a lot of people play League, Counter-Strike, where they just play every other season, and that's totally fine. And we love you that way, no matter how you want to engage.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to have to leave it there. It's very, very interesting. I think I play a bit of multiplayer with my son's son and his friends, and I'm very much the C of every match. So I'm used to that level of being the worst player. But still, thank you so much, Dave, for your time. I'm really looking forward to seeing the new project when it comes out. So we'll keep our eyes keenly focused on. Hopefully, you can come back and talk about that sometime. I'll let you get off and enjoy your day now. Thank you
Thanks all.
very
Have a good one.
much. Awesome. Well, that was great.